Crystal Tower information, Whiskey 2153 Zulu, wind 060 at 5.
076 Mike Juliet, this is departure radar contact.
Hazardous weather information from Minnesota available on flight service frequency.
You've dialed in the Flying Midwest podcast, connecting aviators from across America's heartland, sharing news, information, and events from around the region.
Calling Nancy 53 on Oak Tower, Roger, turn left heading 070, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Sit back, relax, and join our crew for some hangar talk as we discuss a wide variety of regional aviation topics.
Departure 71143, flying 5, runway 280 left, quick takeoff, left hand southbound.
And now, from our home at the Anoka County Blaine Airport, our checklist is complete, and we're ready for departure for another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Contact departure, every flight.
Well, welcome everyone to another wonderful episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. My name is Maddie, and I'm here with my co-host, Jim. Say hello, Jim.
Hello, Maddie, and everyone else.
And the Badger pilot.
He's not here.
He's not here, but we're going to pretend he is. He'll be here for the episode. He has stepped away for a moment to take care of something, but he will be back for the episode, and we will continue with the intro without him.
We can call it how it is. Like, we just did a really, really, really long interview, and the Badger is very sleepy.
Very sleepy Badger.
He has to work like a 14-hour shift tomorrow, and it starts very early. So
yes.
I have no problem throwing him under the bus to say that the Badger needs his beauty sleep, and I respect that.
That beard doesn't stay majestic on its own.
It is majestic, too. He's going to really love when he listens to this episode and hears us talking like this about him. But that's the joy of it.
It's the joy of it. You guys talk trash about me when I'm not here, so
100%.
yeah, it's a rite of passage.
Yes, he will be in for the actual interview, though. We just finished recording the interview. That's how the magic of podcasting works. We record an interview, we do intro and outro later. So here we are.
We love it. The mystery is now gone. The veil has been ripped away.
We have. Pay no attention to the man.
This isn't live? What? Anyway, I can't stop talking.
And we don't record in a chronological order.
We don't.
Interview, then intro, outro.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works.
It's just how it works. That's show business, baby. Yeah, Jim, what have you been up to?
I have been up to... So, this was not something I planned to do. I planned to kind of lay low this weekend.
Okay.
With it being Easter and all that stuff, but I had more free time than I thought I would. We cleaned up the house a bit because of family coming to town, but I did a ton of editing. So I pushed out not only my typical This Week in Aviation History. I learned something, by the way.
That's good.
I'm on a different tangent now. I don't know where I'm going with this, but we're gonna roll with it. I did not know that the women Air Force service pilots in World War II were not recognized as military veterans until 1977.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I knew it had been a while.
Not
I didn't
crazy.
realize that it was that length of time. Like, it was the late 70s before they were recognized as veterans. That's just crazy to me.
Bonkers, right?
But
Mm-hmm.
that was the world we were living in at the time. So
Yeah.
And to some extent today, it's not... I'm going to go on a tangent. I don't want to go.
It's okay. I'll be like one of my students being like, women can't fly to me in the cockpit as we're flying. He didn't.
You want to know how I
seriously.
know that's not true?
Yeah, right? Yeah, the FAA just handed me these. I don't know what they're for.
Yeah. They thought it was Matt Johnson, not Maddie.
I know. I fooled them.
Way to go.
Totally bamboozled them.
I've been screwing around with another video for a few weeks, just kind of playing with it. It wasn't really in the typical format of This Week in Aviation History. It's about temporary flight restrictions and being intercepted.
Oh, boy.
Badger will hear this when he hears the episode. He gave me permission to use just snippets from his videos. So I may have mixed in some Badger flight footage with my TFR intercept video.
Oh, good grief.
There's also some... Brian Turner also graciously allowed me to use some of his video footage from when he played presidential TFR chicken.
Oh, that's good.
So,
that'll be majestic.
So first of all, thank you to both of them for letting me use a little bit of their video clips in my silly little video. But it was a fun one to put together. But what that means in the YouTube algorithm, I will get 7 views because I enjoy it. 7 views. The ones that I'm like, meh, 10,000. Like, what?
Isn't that wacky?
I don't know how this works.
Yeah, I don't. I know a thing or two. It's a mystifying thing. But the more people who watch it and comment on it, generally starts getting put out to people. I do get videos recommended to me of which I have zero interest in that have like 2 views. I'm like, I will watch this on principle because I want this person to do well in whatever the heck it is they're doing.
I was going to say, if you could just watch my videos, then when it pops up and says 2 views, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
See what I did there?
Yeah. And you all should too. You should watch Jim's channel. It's really fun. He does a great job.
Oh, thanks. I also flew an airplane yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a minute. And I felt it as soon as I started doing things. And I said the wrong call sign number of times because I'm so used to flying my Sundowner. When I got on a different Sundowner, I kept saying the wrong call sign.
Oopsies.
To the point where I'm going to have to go pull this audio from Live ATC and then insert it right here. But at one point, I said to the controller, at some time by the end of this flight, I'm going to figure out who I am. And he comes back, yeah, me too.
Gosh. ATC being relatable.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's something to that effect. I'm going to have to go pull it out because it was...
What's your YouTube channel name? I forgot.
Aero Exploration.
That's right. I don't... There you are.
I don't subscribe because it's terrible. No,
That's not true. I'm subscribed.
I'm just messing with you.
Whatever. I just never get recommended your videos for whatever reason. But I will watch them all.
They're not good.
I watched the Airmail route one.
This is going to sound so stupid, but I am all about being honest with our audience. When we took off, you know how there's these left-turning tendencies that the aircraft has?
I think I've heard of them.
Go left, and there's a way to compensate for that, right?
I think so.
With right rudder?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. Right rudder. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I think I was using my military right and not my regular right because I was putting in left rudder. Not during the rollout. Once we were in the air, a couple hundred feet off the ground, I'm trying to compensate and I'm putting in left rudder like an idiot. And
that's a new one. Actually, I've yet to have a student do that. So
I'm like, what? This feels so weird. What is happening? Left rudder.
That's
like an idiot.
That'll do it.
My instructor is very nice about it. About a little bit more right rudder.
Yeah.
That right rudder. Okay.
Yes. I affectionately call that my student's other right.
Once I did that, I had to verbally say, you need to shake it off. Shake it off. The rest of the flight was fine. Slow flight, stalls. My lazy eights and chandelles were great.
Hey.
However, steep turns, hot garbage. I will say this about steep turns in general, and this has been a thing for me forever. I either nail it and they're awesome, or they're hot garbage. There's zero in between for my flying.
You need to figure out the points on your cowling to help you with your pitch.
No kidding. Thank you, Maddie.
No problem.
It was very helpful.
It's every single person I've had who is like, I can't get steep turns. I just can't do it. I'm going to just put this point on the horizon and just don't let it move.
I think the problem I have sometimes is I fixate too much on the cowling, almost to the point where I'm not completely comprehending what that angle looks like with the horizon.
Interesting.
In the time of day that I fly sometimes, just because of late evening as the sun's setting, once I get turned into the sun, it kind of,
that makes sense.
And I'm not putting in back pressure when I need to either. So
that'll do it also.
I know what I'm doing wrong. I just need to fix it.
Yeah.
But my landings were fine. I flared a little too high on one of them. Everything else was great landings last night. I felt really good about the landings. And as you may recall, I was really struggling with right seat landings for a while.
You were, so I'm glad to hear that.
I was tickled with my 3 right seat landings that were just, and the last one was just freaking greaser. So I loved it.
We love to see it.
So happy with it. Mm-hmm. All right, enough about me. What have you been up to?
Not a lot.
All right, well, thanks for that riveting report.
Oh my God, thank you. I've been flying a little bit here and there. The weather's been kind of cruddy. In fact, we just had a thunderstorm pass by. And we're probably going to have more for the next week, which is crazy here. Very strange. Florida, normal. Here, not so much. So that's not going to be fun. But I have some grounds that I'm going to do, maybe fly
Okay.
if the weather's good enough. Been interviewing a couple different companies, so hopefully they don't find this podcast and listen to it, because that's going to be really embarrassing for me.
I'll take all the embarrassing bits out. We talked about this.
Nope, some of them stayed.
That's fair.
So we shall see. But I have a couple of promising things, hopefully, for the near future. So we shall see. And yeah, otherwise, it's been same old. I've been actually doing some things that I've not let myself do for a long time, like playing computer games. I've been playing Stardew Valley with my sister. Not aviation related, but it
What
has
is
been
that
fun.
game?
It's are you familiar with Minecraft?
Yes.
It's kind of like that, except for I don't want to say it's 2D, it's third person perspective.
Okay.
And basically like you're in a little town with a bunch of other little NPCs, and you have your farm, your little farmer, you can grow crops and have animals and like go mining and fight monsters, and it's just like this cute, goofy little game, and you can like make friends with everybody in the village or not. Make enemies.
Do you choose violence?
I'm too nice, actually.
Okay.
I can't do that. Sometimes I choose violence, only with one character. But anyway, yeah. So that's been really fun. I've been playing with my sister and separately with my best friend from back home. So that's been actually a nice, refreshing change of pace.
Yeah, that's gotta be a little relaxing.
Since before I started flight instructing, I have not touched a computer game. Mostly because my computer won't run them. But but also because I'm like, no, it's a huge time waste. I can't do it. But then like, I do it with my sister and stuff. So it's like, it's just fun. Like, it's
bonding.
You know, it's bonding. Exactly. 100%. So not a lot of aviation extra stuff, but that's okay. Doesn't always have to be aviation related. How about you, Badger? Oh, wait.
Well, I've been up to living in Wisconsin with crappy Wi-Fi and teaching myself commercial maneuvers. How was that?
Beautiful.
Did I nail it?
You so nailed it.
No, the Badger appears to have been up to some commercial maneuver stuff. He posted a video on his channel of 8-ton pylons that I have not watched yet, but I know that he's looking for everyone's feedback to see how good he did. And if he messed something up, he wants you to make a comment in his comment section to tell him how how well he did his steep turns. Or not steep turns. That's me. The video's titled "Teaching Myself 8-ton Pylons: The Art of Primacy."
That is such a fantastic title. Oh my god!
That's not what it's called. It's just teaching myself.
That would have been so funny.
The Art of Primacy, I added. The rest of it is him teaching himself 8-ton pylons, which admittedly, if I was going to teach myself a commercial maneuver, it wouldn't be that one.
No. Yeah, hey, how about steep turns to 50 degrees? Can do. 8-ton pylons? Mm-mm.
Even lazy 8s. Do some lazy 8s.
So, Jim, cutting all the shenanigans.
Yeah.
What do we have in store for this episode?
Completely the opposite of what this intro is, of shenanigans and tomfoolery. It's actually a fairly serious topic. We're actually going to skip the news and events in this episode just because I think I want to give this topic a little extra space and time within the episode itself. So we'll jump right into the interview, but we're going to be joined by some of the folks from the Pilot Mental Health Campaign, Chris Hastings and Brian Baumhoff. They're both a part of that organization, and this group has been really busy recently. They've been working on some initiatives and working with some legislators to get some bills introduced in Washington as it pertains to pilot mental health. So Chris and Brian are going to join us. They're going to talk about the organization, the important issues that they're taking on in Washington, and what the future might hold as far as mental health in the aviation industry. So Chris and Brian with Pilot Mental Health Campaign, I am super excited to have you guys here to be a part of this episode. I think this is a really important topic to cover. So thank you so much for being able to come onto the podcast and chat a little bit about what you guys are about.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having us. I know we've been looking forward to it as well. We love getting out there and talking to everyone in the aviation community that we can.
It's our pleasure to be here, Jim.
Hold that thought, because I'm going to ask you some difficult questions here in a second as we jump into what we call our Fast 5 questions. It's a series of 5 quick-ish response answer questions covering all sorts of different topics, nothing too crazy. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you. Favorite airport?
I'm going to go with Denver just because it's my home airport now.
Okay. Like the big Denver airport that we're talking about?
DIA.
Okay. Is that the one that has like the Illuminati, like all this underground stuff that's going on there?
100%. It's got the horse that killed its maker. It's got the secret underground tunnels, aliens,
Yes.
all the conspiracy theories.
Love it. Well, if you have any other insight on that, let us know.
I've been sworn to secrecy.
No, okay. Fair enough. Brian, same question for you, sir. Favorite airport?
Also in the American West, and I've never actually flown into it personally at the controls, but Sedona, the one that's kind of perched up there on that plateau overlooking the valley.
Yeah, that looks really
It's
cool.
a beautiful airport.
All right, so we're going to go opposite order this time. Brian, do you have a least favorite aviation movie?
Oh, least favorite aviation movie.
Anyone can ask you for your favorite.
True. I have to admit I was dreading this section. I'm really bad at the Fast Five, but at least
The good news is no one will know except for us if it was a slow
so many
answer.
bad ones out there that it's, it's really easy to do them badly. I will say, what was it called? Turbulence. It's bad, but in an amazing way.
With that one.
I love it because it's so bad.
Is that the one they put out on Amazon Prime a few months ago, or like a year ago?
I think that was Winging a Prayer, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's.
There have been a couple.
Oh, that might be it.
This was back in
There have
like
been a
maybe the
couple that-
90s, early 2000s. It's like a serial killer who
Okay.
takes over a 747. Very like TV movie vibes.
Oh, I'm sold. I got to go watch it now, even if it's... Everyone loves a good bad movie.
You do, yeah.
Chris, same question for you. Least favorite aviation movie?
I'm gonna dip back to my roots and my previous job a little bit, but like I love it, but I hate it at the same time. Pushing 10.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with that movie.
And background, you would perhaps not love it because the subject matter is something you're very familiar with.
I mean, it's so I was an air traffic controller in my previous job, and
Okay.
there are parts of it that are just kind of close to accurate, and then others like it's just crazy and it's dumb.
I think that same thing holds true for any type of movie or TV show about a certain profession. I think they get close on some stuff and then just take some wild liberties where you just go, that is not how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to go with you, Brian. Ugliest airplane, in your opinion. Doesn't have to be one you've flown or own.
Yeah, I love it, but it's ugly. The Saberliner. Pick your
Okay.
model.
Valid.
The Saberliner.
Pick
Cool airplane.
Okay. Just ugly.
Just ugly.
Your turn, Chris. Ugliest airplane in your professional opinion.
Okay, I'm struggling on this one. I've got to think because I like all planes, but what's the one that requires the special training? The Mitsubishi. Like that
The
thing
MU2?
has a weird, unique, ugly look. Yeah, the
Okay.
MU2. Weird, unique, ugly look. In a beautiful sort of way, it's unique, but also it just freaking screams. It's loud. It's so loud.
Acoustically ugly.
Acoustically ugly. Great answer, Brian.
I'm rated in its jet brother, the beach jet, and having stood around a few of them, holy buckets, yeah, they're loud. And ugly in a beautiful sort of way. So I agree.
Like given the opportunity, I would 100% go and fly one, fly in one. But
Sure. Yeah.
I had to pick.
Yes.
I'm that way with the Canard designs. I think they're ugly, but if someone said, hey, let's go, I wouldn't say no.
Fair enough.
See, I love the Canards.
Do you?
I love I am a sucker. Yes, I am. I'm a
Just-
sucker for a Canard.
To each their own, sir. Okay, on to the fourth question. Who went first last time? I think, Brian, I've gone to you a couple of times first. And I feel like that's an unfair advantage for Chris, because he has more time to think about the answer. So, Chris, it's your turn. If you had a dream airplane, cost is no issue. What would it be?
Okay, I've been getting more and more into like the home build experimental scene,
Okay.
and I can't remember the name of it. Hold on. Rutan Long Easy. Gotta live up to my Canard.
Yes!
Well played, sir. Swings
Play the
back around
long
with a
game.
canard. All right. I'll give you that. Brian, how about you?
So this one, it's been through several branding iterations over the years. when my family's company did a mock-up for it, like back in the late 90s, it was this Cynosure engine, SJ something. Now it's a Cyberjet with an S-Y-B-E-R, Cyberjet SJ30. Have any of you heard about it?
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
It's a business jet. Was supposed to be a business jet, and it is. I think they've made like 10 of them or something, but it can go almost 600 miles an hour and coast to coast, and it's technically a VLJ. Like, it's a really tiny fuselage.
Okay.
Really cool plane. FJ-44 engine.
It's cute.
It's really advanced, and it's been around since like the late 80s. It's one of those tragedies in aviation.
Okay. Brian, I'm coming back to you. If you could meet anyone in aviation, dead or alive, who would it be?
If I could meet anyone?
Meet anybody and have a conversation with them about aviation or anything you want, really, but someone in aviation.
I'm just going to, since all my answers seem to be like business jet themed, I'm just going to keep it on that theme and say Bill Lear.
Why not?
Their jets are just like one of the things he did. Very eclectic, creative person.
I like it. All right, Chris, press or John. Anyone in aviation?
I know. There are a lot of really good people.
And if you say something silly like Burt Rutan...
No, I'm not. I'm thinking through like early aviation historical figures, like the pioneers in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
I almost want to say Howard Hughes.
Oh.
That's a great answer.
I don't think we've heard that one before, have we?
not.
What about Howard Hughes for you, Chris?
Kind of midlife career change, going to aerospace engineer, being a giant business, blah, 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 film producer, philanthropist, pilot, kind of the jack of all trades. A little bit of what I aspire to be, maybe not the Hollywood part, but, trying to combine aviation, which is a passion, with business and something unique.
Okay.
Just watch out for whatever happened right before the end there.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
All right. Well, thank you two for playing along with our kind of fast 5 questions. We're going to jump into the more formal questions of the interview now, and I'm going to pass it off to Maddie.
So, Brian, could you tell us a little bit about your background in aviation?
Yeah, totally. So I've done a bunch of seemingly random things throughout my life, and aviation was involved now and also kind of way back in the beginning. So when I was growing up, my grandfather owned a company that made executive jet interiors, basically. You can actually still go to our facilities in Wichita. They're now owned by Textron. I'm pretty sure they're all Textron. And we have kind of remnant offspring companies that I can point out around in Kansas. But that was a really cool experience because I got to see sort of the back end of what the production and production management looks like. Supply chain is very interesting to me. And aviation in general, I think that was probably where I got the bug. Also, my grandmother in Western Kansas is no longer, but was a flight instructor. So back in the 70s, she was a flight instructor before I was born. And so
How cool.
I think those were some influences that compelled me to get my pilot's license when I was in high school. So basically, as soon as it was legal for me to do so, I started taking lessons, did end up getting the license, but kind of a little bit of origin story about PMHC. It was when I was getting my license that I had to go through some of that FAA invasive, annoying, ostensibly for designed to keep the airspace safe, to keep everyone safe is the intention. And the intention is really good. Mm-hmm. The execution now and even back then was really, in my opinion, kind of inefficient and almost sloppy in some ways because I think I had gone through therapy and I had been on medication before. So, and back then, all I had to do was get a note from my doctor kind of explaining everything. This was before the COG screen was a really big thing. It actually wasn't that big of a deal, but it always struck me that I had to kind of taper off my antidepressant before I could solo, even though I learned how to fly while taking it. They didn't seem to think that was weird. I did, but that was sort of my introduction to that process. And then I had always been interested in aviation more so as a hobby and maybe as like a passion on the work front, but probably more of like a charter or smaller type business. I don't think I have the stamina or attention span to be a commercial pilot. That's a compliment to all my commercial pilot friends listening. So I did a bunch of random stuff. After college, I got involved in political campaigns, kind of just fell into that accidentally through some friends and internships that I had during college. I worked on state, local campaigns, mostly here in Washington and other Western states. Also some stuff at the federal level. Worked on a couple presidential campaigns at the very low, like internship level. But so that was kind of my career for about 8 years. Specifically, campaign finance was what I fell into. And then got back into our family business, which we kind of restarted back around 2020. And that's currently technically my day job. So we still do the same thing that we did way back in 1952, which is aircraft interiors, just a much smaller scale, more custom, more hands-on, more design focused. So we'll see where that business goes. It's super interesting. I think the future of aviation is super interesting in general. But basically, I had this knowledge of government, nonprofit, kind of political advocacy arena. And I also had knowledge of aerospace. And I started learning about the issue of pilot mental health because I started listening to a few podcasts where mostly younger people started talking about their experiences about this issue. And when I heard that people were finally willing to put themselves out there in some way or another, I was like, okay, this seems like this is the right time to start some sort of organization that was going to more formally try to bring these groups together. Because I did a bunch of research and there wasn't, there's a lot of really great aviation advocacy organizations out there, but they're all sort of, they do their own thing. And a lot of times that thing is like 500 different things. And it was just, there was no one organization that was focused on pilot mental health. And I should clarify, when I say pilot mental health, I do mean aviator mental health, mechanic mental health, ATC mental health. It's just pilot mental health. The general public gets that more than.
Sure.
That was a long-winded answer, and I'm happy to clarify.
No. So, Chris?
Let me guess, same question.
Yes, you got to answer too. Sorry. So what is your background, your life, your aviation career? Tell me about yourself.
I got involved at an early age. I got the bug at an early age. My aunt was a flight attendant for American, and we flew out to visit her in Virginia when I was about 10 years old. And first time on a DC-10 before 9/11, in the middle of the flight, I was able to go up into the cockpit, and they showed me all the alarms and everything, and basically made the plane do stuff in flight because they were bored, which is awesome. And I fell in love with it because I was a 10-year-old boy. Kind of permeated through as I got into middle school and high school. I found ways to get more involved in the aviation community. Started working on my pilot's license in high school, finished it in college when I was 20, just before I turned 21. College went for air traffic control back when the CTI program was still a thing, and now they're trying to revive it. Was trying to get a job as an air traffic controller because the pilot route wasn't really paying out. Was in just after the 2008 financial crisis, so all the regionals were paying like $15,000-$20,000 a year. And they had just increased the hours for ATP and made that a requirement. So it didn't make much sense to continue that professionally. But my local community college had an air traffic program, and I went through with that. Spent a little bit of time in 139 airport operations at Fort Lauderdale International. So I kind of have the trifecta of aviation experience, just not maintenance. So I did that, got hired with the FAA. Maybe someday. But got hired with the FAA, went through the academy in Oklahoma City, got sent off to Fort Worth Center, spent a few years there, didn't make it in training there, but then went off to Pueblo Tower, certified there, worked there for 3 years. And then I decided I'm kind of bored and I want to change. And I went off to be a flight instructor. And that's what I'm doing now. So kind of flopped around quite a bit. While I was an air traffic controller, I was really active with the union, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. And they had a legislative team that would go out to Washington, D.C. and build relationships with They're congressional representatives all across the country. And I got involved with that and found I really enjoy this. I like going and meeting and talking about my passion and my hobby and how what's going on impacts me. And kind of got to see how the FAA's mental health processes impact the community. I went through some issues myself. I lost a friend very close to me, and as a professional, I said, I'm not okay. I need to take some time off, need to step away for a little bit. And at first it was okay. And then all of a sudden it's, well, now you can't work. You're disqualified because we don't know why you can't work, which to me was kind of a mind blowing. Like, what are you talking about? Like it's life. They told me to essentially write a letter saying I'm safe to work. And then they put me back in. But then they found out I was talking to a therapist while I was dealing with everything. And they said, well, no, now because you talked to a therapist, you have to go through this entire other process to come back. And they pulled my medical again. So kind of sowed the seeds of me getting involved with PMHC and advocating for a change to the medical process and trying to modernize the system.
Sorry for your loss, but
Yeah.
no, it's awesome that you guys both, had trouble, but saw the opportunity and got involved.
Yeah. Nice.
So I'm going to swipe that on over to Badger so he can ask more questions.
Because that leads right into it quite nicely, actually, because you both have firsthand experiences with some of the issues that pilots come across when it comes to their medical. So obviously you guys saw firsthand there was a need for potential change or reform. But I'm assuming you guys saw that need out there with others. So what kind of made you guys start doing all of this? Give us a little bit of a background and history of the pilot mental health campaign.
Yeah, for me, it was my experience was annoying, and I considered it a personal setback, and it kind of stuck with me a while. But it wasn't what I would call a tragedy in the way that I've heard many other people, unfortunately, have experienced the system. What actually did it for me to kind of be like, I need to set aside my day job and actually get this going, was when I found out about a young man at the University of North Dakota who unfortunately took his own life in a training aircraft, left a note for his family, basically explaining that he had considered getting help for symptoms of depression, but didn't end up doing so because he was worried that doing so would basically it would end his flying career. And flying was, as he described it, one of the things that brought him the most joy. And there was a lot in that letter that I actually that resonated with me, and I can understand where his mindset was. And I mean, first of all, if you're ever in that place, please do get help, because the bureaucratic stuff that we're trying to fix is trivial compared to getting help and attending to your own health and the health of you and your loved ones. But I can't understand why people would think that. And it's a tragedy that we would ever have a system where people are put in that situation where, when they're really considering whether or not they're going to seek some sort of mental or even physical help, healthcare of some type, that they hesitate for any reason. And then I did more research, and I fell across the research that Dr. William Hoffman has done in the Air Force. And he did a pioneering study, I think it was 2022 or 23, that showed 56% of pilots admitted to avoiding healthcare of some sort or another for fear of losing their medical certificate. And once I read that, it was sort of like, okay, this is a much bigger deal than I think people were realizing. And anecdotally, just from all my friends who were pilots, I knew it was a much bigger deal than people were talking about, because people won't talk about it because they're afraid for obvious reasons. And so I was like, it was really John's story. And tragically, John Hauser's not the only person who's suffered the most severe consequences.
Brian, it's interesting you bring up the physical with the mental, as far as health goes. I remember having an issue that it turned out to be nothing, but I was talking to my dad and he said, well, you should go get it looked at. I said, I don't want them to find anything that would prevent me from flying. And his response was, but you don't want to miss something that would prevent you from living. And that really stuck with me. And ultimately, it ended up being nothing, but he was talking about a medical thing, but it can certainly expand to the mental health side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a system that I think we were lucky enough to attend the NTSB roundtable on mental health and aviation back in November 2023. I highly recommend, if anyone's interested, watching that. You can just Google NTSB Mental Health Roundtable. It's on YouTube. It's a really good overview of this issue, and it has a lot of really good thinkers, a lot of people in aviation and also at the FAA who have been working on this and are familiar with it for a long time. But Chairwoman Jennifer Homendy of the NTSB, who, the NTSB is basically in charge of ensuring the safety of our national transportation system. So her words are not to be taken lightly. She basically said that the system as it exists now is not what we would call safety. What we would call safety is a culture, a system that encourages people to get help and doesn't shame them or silence them, even unintentionally, when they do so. And I think that's very true. And I think more people are finally realizing that in Congress and in other parts of aviation as well.
I personally fly on basic med now because I made a conscious decision of my health is more important than the full-on medical. I just fly for fun. I can fly on basic med with my situation. But not everyone has that opportunity. All that to say, I was floored to find out that, like, if you're on certain SSRIs to get, like, past the FAA, you have to go through the same, like, COG screening as, like, an addict or someone who is struggling with alcohol. And terrible things as well to have to deal with. But talk about a stigma. Like, you're trying to get yourself help. You're trying to get on this antidepressant or anti-anxiety or what have you. But here we're going to send you through the same screening that we send people who have had drug problems.
Yeah, and they do that because I don't know that they would admit this, but they basically don't trust their own AMEs that much. And so the HIMSS AME is it's a higher level of training who do, they have to take training on substance use and abuse protocols. And some of that does kind of merge with mental health stuff. And so it's not an ideal fit, but they had nowhere else, no other body of experts on the AME side to kind of put the antidepressant and other mental health cases in. And so that's why to this day, since they first legalized the SSRI pathway in 2010, you still have to go through a process that is very similar to the HIMSS process, where you have a neuropsychological evaluation, psychiatric evaluation, computerized cognitive screening tests, and probably a Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory and a bunch of other fun things. Mm-hmm. We could argue about whether or not how much of that data is valid. I think some of it is. Whether or not it's necessary to certify a lot of people, especially for third, second class. I think there's a good argument to be had there that it's a bit overkill.
And here's part of the trap is you don't even have to be on medication to get shoved into that process. My specific experience was I talked to a therapist to deal with my friend's passing, and that resulted in a diagnosis because our medical system bills through insurance. Insurance isn't going to just pay for something that's not medically necessary. Your provider has to provide justification that shows that it should be paid and you need the treatment. Well, the most benign thing that they can really diagnose is an adjustment disorder. Something in your life changed and you're adjusting to it. That it used to be enough to kick you into this process. I will give the FAA and the aeromedical arm a little bit of credit. They have changed that to where now it's just that adjustment disorder. It's a condition that an AME can issue, but that happened while I was going through the HIMSS process, and it was the same thing. It's you have to go find a HIMSS AME, then you have to go do a HIMSS psychiatrist and talk about your entire life. Everything that happened, and then they generate a report to send off to your HIMSS AME to submit the entire package, even without medication. So it's the system that has prevented people from talking. I know I have several friends who know what I went through, And they have come up to me after I went through that asking, hey, I need to go, me and my wife are having issues and we want to go see a therapist, but like, I can't lose my medical. What do I do? And that is the system, that is the culture that this system has created. And it's part of what we're trying to change.
And they know most people are going to get through, and most people do get through, but it's that uncertainty of, well, am I going to be in the couple percent who doesn't? Or even if I do get through, is it going to be $10,000? Am I going to be out of the cockpit for a year, 2 years? I mean, that's a really big deal for a lot of people.
I think one of the barriers and one of the considerations that people are even going through now online is how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost? And what is the actual process? Because there's a lot of obscurity. It's the actual process isn't clear. And you don't really know what the process is going to be until you're in it.
I mean, they've made, like Chris said, I give the FAA credit. Dr. Susan Northrup is certainly the best federal air surgeon we've ever had. That being said, we've had some pretty bad ones in the past, or maybe not bad is maybe not the correct term, but not very proactive on a lot of these issues, and not very forward looking. And I think it's very easy to get into their sort of bureaucratic organizational inertia, where it's safer to not change things rather than try to change things and then possibly get blamed if anything were to go wrong. But if you look at other countries, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada, most of the EU, most of these do have less, how would I phrase it? They penalize you less for disclosing stuff like this. And I think that's one of the things that PMHC is advocating for, more of an individualized medicine approach versus a checklist and flowchart approach, which works great for, engine maintenance, but the human beings are very complicated
and unique.
One other aspect that we need to kind of focus on is it's not just the individualized basis, it's trusting medical providers to do the right thing and do right by their patients and for public safety. Because right now the FAA's approach is basically, okay, you have this, we don't trust you, give us everything you have and jump through these hoops to prove that it's actually what your doctor says and that you are okay. And that doesn't really work. Well, the FAA doesn't have the resources to do it. They even admit that.
Right.
They have a backlog of cases to review. They need to trust medical providers to be medical providers.
Yeah.
Valid points.
Just from looking at stuff, the medical that I go through, a first class medical to be a, airline transport pilot, exercise those privileges, it's that versus basic med, which Jim can attest to. To do basic med, it's like a full-on deal. Even that is okay, so where do we draw the line with that? I think you guys raised some great points there.
On basic med, I'll just throw out, the FAA's own data on basic med has shown that it's just as safe as a third-class medical. So, and I would even argue in some cases probably more safe, because I would argue people on basic med have a greater degree of trust in their doctors. That's a theory. Could be wrong, but I would imagine that you trust your basic med doctor a bit more than a random AME simply because you know them more.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tag on to basic med as well. As it wasn't the FAA that came up with that. It was an act of Congress that forced the FAA to come up with it.
Yeah. And as a basic med holder, I will say I trust my personal physician a lot more to make those determinations about how I'm responding to certain things and how my treatment path, because they are my regular doctor who are intimately familiar with this process. More so than, like you guys said, a random AME. That even my AME, when I saw him every handful of years, I mean, I'm just another guy coming through at the airport as opposed to my personal physician who understands kind of where I'm at with stuff.
Yeah, so. And the AMEs, I mean, some are fantastic. I mean, so good that people travel across the country to go to them, which in and of itself is kind of a problem. You really shouldn't have to do that.
No, you shouldn't. No. We've covered kind of what the need is in the space as far as why these are issues and problems. Tell us a bit about the mission of your organization.
So PMHC, we envision a future where people are able to get mental and physical health care without fear of unreasonable repercussions. So basically, we want people to be able to go see a therapist when they feel like the need arises, and get perhaps a more significant deal of treatment, knowing that there's a path back, as long as they're not in a very, very small category of people who, unfortunately, with medical science and mental health, there's probably not a path for some individuals at this point. But the overwhelming majority of people who have a diagnosable mental health condition, there is technically a path now. It's just that it's so burdensome that it's really hard to get there. And so we want to eliminate those burdens to the extent that we can. And so we do that through a variety of ways. Our number one mission, I would say, is advocacy. And so we were just in Washington, D.C. Earlier this month for our second annual Advocacy Day. We had about 70 people up on Capitol Hill, about 70 meetings with members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate.
Wow.
We also do education. So we've been active in various aviation events, Sun and Fun, Oshkosh, all sorts of smaller kind of regional and more airline or group-focused organizations. If anyone wants to have us talk, we'll definitely try to show up. I think, Chris, thank you for covering Alaska this year. I did the Alaska Air Carriers Association last year. There's so many awesome little groups like that across, not little, medium little groups like that across the nation that do such great work. And we look forward to working with any of them in any capacity that we can. So coalition building, community building is something else we do. Advocacy, outreach, education.
We're actively discussing kind of what the future of PMHC is. How are we going to move forward? Like, if we get everything we ask for, what is the organization going to be? And we're actively discussing, trying to figure out or outline what our path is, what our plan is, and kind of as what we've come up with so far is we want to be the subject matter experts on this. We want to be out there to provide the guidance, to provide research, to provide the legislative push to get things done the way that it really should be done. And I don't think we're pushing for anything crazy. Most people that I've talked to, even outside of aviation, are shocked when they hear what the hoops you have to jump through and what the process is and how long it can take for something as simple as you're talking to someone because you moved to a new town and are having trouble fitting in and making friends, because making friends as an adult is statistically harder. Like, it's harder to find that connection, and talking to someone and working through it is much better and healthier than bottling it up and being frustrated and hating everything. But the system as it currently is doesn't recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would just say, in terms of becoming subject matter experts, that's sort of in the last year and a half or so that we've been active, it's become really apparent that there's a need not just for advocacy, but for services as well. We have a lot of people who reach out to us wanting help with information on their cases or suggesting peer support programs. And then we also have a lot of researchers from around the world who reach out to us because there just aren't a lot of groups doing this. And so we are working as quickly as we can to fill that void so that PMHC can become not just an advocacy organization focused on policy improvement, but also providing resources across the aviation spectrum.
That's awesome.
And
it's definitely lacking.
It is lacking, and we're super young. So I would say people who join us now, you will have an outsized impact on the future path of our organization. Because Chris is right, we are charting that course now, and it's a little intimidating, but also very exciting because in the last 2 years we've actually accomplished quite a lot for an organization that kind of just popped up out of nowhere.
That's awesome. It's crazy seeing how much of a shift, even in the last, like the mentality from 10, 15 years ago to now, as far as therapy and mental health. It's like, yeah, everybody goes to therapy. Duh. We've all got problems and we know it, like in the general space, but in aviation, it's still like, oh no, hold your horses. You need therapy. What is wrong with you? Don't fly. How dare you? And the FAA is still stuck in that, like Chris, what you said about that, people are shocked at how archaic these things are. And it's absolutely mind-boggling that it keeps happening, even when, people struggle, they put in the paperwork because there's a time limit, and then the FAA says, oh no, we took too long, you need to do the tests again, which is absolutely insane.
And Maddie, kind of to your point, you were touching a bit on the change in culture that we've had as a society. Therapy is almost expected of healthy adults anymore, just like going to your normal doctor for your checkup, getting your vaccinations and random tests to make sure there's nothing wrong. It's considered preventative health care in a lot of cases, or treating something before it festers. And if you cut your finger, it's going and getting the cut cleaned out and taken care of before it has the chance to get infected and fester. A lot of the issues that I think we face in aviation is our culture. And it was actually identified in the Pilot Mental Health Aviation Rulemaking Committee report of the culture within aviation. And even to this day, being the activist that I am now and knowing all these things and having dived into it, I struggle to send people to fill out their medical form without giving them the preface of, hey, this is only if it's been diagnosed, this da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and giving them kind of the run-through of everything so that they don't get caught by one of these hidden traps we have in the aeromedical process. Mm-hmm. I'm sure as a flight instructor and activist in the aviation community, you guys have heard pilots saying, no, you don't talk about that. You don't report anything. You don't go get health care. And that's the culture we have. And it's part of the challenge that we're going to face in actually fixing this issue. Even if we do go and get all this legislation and the rules changed, we're going to have to go and change the culture, and it's going to start with us.
Absolutely.
What you just described there, Chris, is a really common feeling amongst people who have some degree of experience where they want to help, and yet they don't want to discourage people from seeking help. They want them to get it, but they also don't want them to get trapped in this maze of bureaucracy if it's not necessary. This is what I call the ethical dumpster fire of trying to help someone who's trying to navigate the system. Because it's like, how do you tell your therapist, we can't go here, but I didn't say that. Yeah, it's like,
oh my gosh, for real.
Yeah.
I honestly think that mental health almost may be not the easier thing, but the more approachable thing, because of how quickly and how determined culture was to flip that script. And now, like we were talking about, everybody gets therapy. Well, if everybody gets it, why shouldn't pilots? Whereas medical stuff, you still get people who just don't go to the doctor and stuff, which, people will be like that. But I feel like because it is now so widely talked about and discussed across most aid groups and stuff like that, minus maybe, the really older side, I think it's very approachable.
I think it's interesting because I have
it.
a few friends who are sheriff deputies up here where I live, and they will usually go through critical incident response. I don't know if they necessarily call it therapy, but it's sort of they'll have appointments with their in-house therapist afterwards. And if they're not feeling okay, that's fine. It doesn't get, unless it involves just something really, really serious, they don't make that big of a deal. In fact, it's assumed that there will be some trauma based on what they see every day. Same in a lot of military settings. And I think you've seen military move a lot more towards the direction of kind of getting people to talk about these things so that they don't get covered up and kind of come out as other symptoms later on in a much more proactive way than the FAA has.
I will say for my agency, we are required once a year to meet with our EAP or Employee Assistance Program mental health provider. Even if you go in there and talk about football or what sports are you have to go sit down with that person, and they will at least give you resources and some thoughts and guidance. But it has been, for our agency at least, remarkable how many people have taken advantage of that and sought additional sessions with this person because they're like, I'm not okay, and that's okay. Let's work through it.
Yeah.
And those are also positions of pretty significant public trust.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's generally understood that, you'll be a better, more capable public servant if you fully understand what's going on in yourself, in your mind, rather than, ignoring it.
So as you guys started hearing stories from others about maybe some of their struggles with their medicals or requests for reform with the FAA, were there any common threads to any of these stories?
One common thread I noticed was that a lot of them were incredibly tragic, and that people lost time and money and had their mental health adversely affected further than the point that it was already at, because they decided to seek help. And then, ironically, I would also add that many of the stories are simultaneously hilarious, like people being asked for their VA records, but they're not veterans. People getting mixed up with the wrong individual, people, their case files getting mixed up. People being asked, like, they get through this whole, this one individual I'm thinking about got through the mental health processing thing and was like, awesome, I'm good to go. And then got a letter about his topical acne medication,
Oh my goodness.
Wanted a disposition from his dermatologist about I don't know what the risk was there, but
Amazing.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories was hearing your VA record says you were treated for pink eye. We need you to go and get the record showing that you no longer have pink eye. The treatment was 12 years ago. So it's that kind of stuff. But touching on Brian's points a little bit, my name is Chris Hastings, and there is another Chris Hastings that is an FAA medical certificate holder, and I have received their medical files. I have requested my own medical files and been included on someone else's completely unrelated, not even the same name. And I'll give the FAA credit on that one. It was sent out and then immediately revoked. But not so much the stories of people going through the medical process for me. It's more the people who have not gotten help. The stories I've heard from friends, from colleagues who, when I was going through my stuff, shared what they went through and how they dealt with it. And it wasn't by going and getting help. It was alcohol or going and spending money on stuff that isn't legal in the country. Talking about experiences where they sat with weapons out and tried to decide, what am I doing? And the common theme in all of them was they didn't feel like they could go and get help. They didn't feel that they had an out. And they were trying to figure out how to navigate a process that isn't charted. And the fears were largely the same. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills if I lose my medical, because this is my job. I am the breadwinner for the house. I don't know what I'm going to do if I lose this job, because I don't have any other skills. I've done this my entire life. I don't know what the process is, and I'm scared. I think that is probably the most common theme that I've seen from people that have gotten help or have talked about their experiences.
Thank you for bringing that up, Chris, because I think so I don't actually work in the aviation sector on a day-to-day basis in the sense that you do and everyone on this podcast does. But I work at PMHC, and so the stories I hear tend to be more detailed from people after they've gone through the process, because we're so interested in improving that process. But you're right, there's so many stories that I never hear about that you do, and people who are in this every day do hear about. But I guess if you kind of just getting back to the basics of your question, if you wanted us to summarize kind of common themes that come up a lot, the wait time, crazy excessive wait times, uncertainty is something that really gnaws at people when they're considering whether or not to go through this process. And even once they're in the process, the uncertainty it's like they can deal with the setbacks. They can deal with whatever the FAA's instructions for them are. They just want those instructions rather than waiting 9 months. So the uncertainty, the expense is a really big one. Barriers, the barriers to getting help are something that comes up a lot. And then, of course, the process concerns.
You guys have mentioned HIMSS AMEs a couple of times now. And for our listeners that aren't familiar, Some might hear HIMSS and have no idea what that means. Some might think it's the TV commercial with the online doctor and the discreet packaging for your medication. For those not familiar and to differentiate.
The Human Intervention Motivational Study was a cross-sector research study launched by the FAA, pilots unions, and airlines in, I believe, the middle of the 1970s. First pioneered in the United States. The idea was to take pilots who were having some sort of substance use problem, most commonly alcohol addiction or alcohol abuse, and give them a pathway to treatment. Because until then, there had been no pathway. You'd basically be found out either because you did something that got you discovered, or you'd disclose, or someone would basically tell on you, or maybe you were gotten to the point where you actually did pose threats, and so they got you out of there for your own good and for the good of everyone else. But this was designed to get people on a ramp that was clear, that did have clear objectives, that had timelines, deadlines, a process. And that process is still around today. The FAA would argue it's a very successful system, and I would argue that it can be a very successful system for the right people who want to go through it. There's a whole bunch of issues around the HIMSS program that we could get into. It's sort of its own little world, but the HIMSS program is basically the FAA's, more so the airline and FAA's way of dealing with pilots with substance use disorders. Sure. I would say the National Academies of Sciences drafted a report about the HIMSS program that is publicly available. If any listeners are curious, that took kind of a deep dive, as deep as they could go, I guess. It's helping a lot of people. It's helped a lot of people without any question. Like all the systems that we're talking about today, I think it could use some improvement.
You guys mentioned spending some time on Capitol Hill. If I'm not mistaken, there's a couple of legislations that are kind of working their way through the various houses in Washington. Can you tell us a bit about that? Is it two bills right now that's kind of working their way through?
Yeah, so we have two bills that were introduced while we were in DC to the 119th Congress. So we have, the Aviation Medication Transparency Act, which is a bill that would essentially tell the FAA, publish a list of medications that pilots are allowed and not allowed to take. Right now, the example I like to use is, let's say you have high blood pressure and you go to your doctor and you're working through a bunch of different options, and there are 4 or 5 medications that might fit that to work for your condition. And maybe 4 of them are disqualifying medications for one reason or another. But the 5th one is perfectly fine, and it's allowed. It's a treatable condition. You can have a medical issued with it. The only way you find that out is by going and getting the medication and reporting it and seeing what happens. There is not a list readily available that you can go and look at and bring to your doctor and say, hey, this is what I can take. Will any of these work? How can we come up with a medical plan that will incorporate these medications and allow me to continue working? And I want to quickly clarify, you can call, and if you can get a hold of someone at the regional flight surgeon office or Oklahoma City, sure, you can run the medication by then. But it's not readily available. That's the biggest problem.
You can also go to the AME guide, which is updated once a month usually, and basically just do Command F and try to find the medication you're looking for and see if it's listed. But if it's not listed, that doesn't necessarily give you a yes or no answer. And so the AMTA is actually a really simple bill that has gotten very broad bipartisan support. The only thing that we've had to explain a few times is that, yes, we are actually asking Congress to implement this, even though it seems like such a basic idea. We're asking you to do statute on this. Yeah, the second one is it's a bigger, bulkier one, and that is the Mental Health in Aviation Act. And so the Mental Health in Aviation Act, we started working with some legislators who were drafting that about a year ago now. And that sort of came out of some of the NTSB roundtable hearings, and then also was designed to kind of fit in with the Aviation Medical Rulemaking Committee that Even I get my acronyms screwed up sometimes. So Chris, so please.
The Pilot Mental Health Aviation Rulemaking
The ARC. Yeah, the ARC. So the ARC recommendations, they had 24 of them, which came out. The very first one and the ARC was a group that I referred to earlier of the people who kind of across the industry who came together to form 24 recommendations. And I think they were charged with, this report's available online too. If you just Google FAA Mental Health ARC, you'll see the report from last year, April 1st, 2024. And it had 24 recommendations. The first one being basically to legalize talk therapy. That's not exactly how it was worded, but it was essentially make talk therapy unreportable in most circumstances. And then the other 24 are all really good recommendations, some more in-depth, some easier to implement than others. But I think one of my favorite ones is to move the system from a diagnosis-based system to more of a safety systems management approach that would prioritize symptoms and kind of where you're at right now, rather than just based on your diagnosis or past, whatever history or treatment protocol.
I think the biggest one that I think everyone agrees with is to eliminate the need to report talk therapy, psychotherapy, I think is how they worded it in there.
Number one.
There's a recommendation to reduce or eliminate the need for cognitive testing. I believe in the report they go into the questionable usefulness of the actual testing, and the test is biased against older individuals, which there's an argument to be made that as you age cognitively, your performance decreases a little bit. That's part of why we have mandatory retirement ages and stuff. But because the COG screen, it's called the COG screen AE Aerospace, and it's actually a private test licensed by the FAA to use. So because of that, it's really hard to get data on it. You have to pay the person that developed it in order to get access to the test and be licensed to use the test and interpret the results. I just pulled up the ARC again. I'm just kind of quickly glancing through because what was it, 24 recommendations, and there's quite a few. There's a bunch of good ones, but there's also a bunch of just process changes and back-end changes. So requirements for attention and deficit hyperactivity disorder, requirements on PTSD, the implementation of a safety management system, and just kind of touching on that, a safety management system, and for those that aren't familiar, it's a structured organization-wide approach to managing safety risks by using effective safety controls, essentially. So it's not, we're never going to do this. It's let's look at what the risks are and come up with reasonable controls to prevent the risks from rearing their heads.
And Chris, is that kind of where a just culture framework would fit in?
So you're going to get me going off on one of my favorite topics, which is safety culture. But a just culture is required for safety culture. So essentially what a just culture is it is a culture in which mistakes are not punished. You don't allow willful violations of the rules, the regulations, but if there's a mistake and it's reported, you're not going to take punitive actions. And the FAA would argue they don't take punitive actions with the medical system, but the actual effect is people are down, people lose their medicals and are out of work for who knows how long as they go through the process. There's a financial strain on them. So that provides the incentive to where it is essentially a punitive process for reporting something.
And I think one of the ways that they were thinking of potentially implementing that was, so back in 2010 when they did the original SSRI protocol, they had a period of, it was publicly called amnesty, but it was actually deferred
action. So I don't know what it was called in 2010, but that's one of the recommendations as well. A regulatory pathway for reporting mental health conditions and medications. It's recommendation number 2 in the ARC.
Yeah, so that you could basically report things that may or may not have been reported in the past and maybe not suffer punishment for not disclosing them in the past. Point being, just to get everyone on the same page and encourage disclosure. So that was another one that we definitely support. But so the 24 ARC recommendations are included in the MHAA, The MHAA was originally drafted to kind of take some of the language out of the FAA reauthorization from 2024. And so there's a few items in there that basically kind of squeeze it into the mental health working group that was mandated by the reauthorization. But the most important thing in there is that it does mandate that the ARC recommendations are implemented by the FAA within 2 years, which is a big deal. And the way that it's worded is not, it's not sort of like, please look at, evaluate, and analyze. It's shall implement. And it's really easy for government agencies to get around things when they're told to look at things and evaluate things rather than told to actually do them. And then it also does provide funding, because we understand that the Office of Aerospace Medicine is chronically underfunded. So I think it's about $17 million for the first 3 years. And then it's about $1.5 million for a public education campaign, so that people like us know that these changes are being made, and hopefully encourage people to disclose and get treatment. Like Chris said, it's all about culture. So how much that $1.5 million a year is going to help all depends on to what extent the FAA really shows that they're willing to change culture and earn the trust of pilots. If you want to support them, the easiest way you can do that is just go to our website, pmhc.org, and on our homepage there, I believe, on the Take Action button, that should link to our Action Center, which will allow you to write your members of Congress. And I highly encourage you to write them. It kind of fills out a little form for you to make it easier. Feel free to use that, or you can also put in your personal story if you want, or you can certainly call them, rather than emailing. But that's, I would say, the lowest. There's few barriers to entry to just going to the website and kind of clicking through. I'm very happy to say that this is a nonpartisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. This is about improving safety, improving the safety of the airspace for those of us who are flying in it as pilots and also as passengers and anyone on the ground. It's designed to, we're trying to make this better for everyone, rather than, because some of the counter messaging you might encounter when you're out there is that this would loosen standards. And I would push back hard on that. We don't want to loosen any standards. We want to increase the standards by making sure that people actually live up to the standards by disclosing and going through and getting treatment, but doing so in a way that doesn't punish them, and therefore makes it safer for everyone.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I just kind of touch on, there's a large consensus within the aviation community that change needs to happen. And I think that is great that we all agree that we need to change the process. The step that's a little bit harder is actually stepping up and working to make that change happen.
Sure.
And large bureaucratic organizations and government organizations are slow to change. So in order for us to see the change that we want, we as aviators need to step up and push the system to change for the better. And I know that is hard. It's hard for me some days to get up and realize I've got to go walk 10 miles in Washington, D.C. in very uncomfortable shoes. But it's how the system is going to change. And you don't have to go to D.C. in order to do it. Being active within the community and helping to change the culture of aviation around you is going to help change the system overall. The easiest and quickest way I see the system changing is if tomorrow everyone in aviation suddenly reported everything, because the FAA's aeromedical system would crumble. There would be no pilots or air traffic controllers certified to do anything, and the system would have to change out of necessity. That's not a practical solution. But as a culture within the aviation industry, we need to start moving towards that, to where, hey, this is here, it's not going away, and it's also not a safety risk. We need to change our views around it, and we need to be able to get the data to support it, or actually go, oh no, that is a safety risk, and we really shouldn't have people like that in safety sensitive positions. But right now there's an absence of it because we don't report it. The industry as a whole kind of sweeps it under the rug, and the FAA is the FAA.
Fair enough. Is there anything else that we wanted to cover that we haven't?
I would say if you heard anything in this podcast that you're curious about, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. info@pmhc.org is probably the best for that. We're also active on social media. Feel free to DM us any questions about anything, really. We can't answer questions about your specific case history necessarily. We can give more abstract, general information, though. And if you want to help, we are growing very quickly, and we're always looking for new volunteers. And then I would say, because I used to work in campaign finance, it's unfortunate, but it really is true that this is just like a company or any other organization. It does take money to pay for our consultants, to pay for communications campaigns, to do all this work to get us to Washington, D.C. So even if it's like $5, even ideally $5 a month would be great, because sustained revenue is great. But the idea that any small donation can't make a difference is simply not correct. I can tell you that from experience.
You mentioned, other opportunities, volunteer stuff coming up. Is that all on the website as well? Are there certain specific opportunities where you're looking for certain types of volunteers, or just whatever can help?
It will soon be on the website. The website's it's coming along. It's a work in progress. But so what would happen now is that when you reach out, you'll be contacted by one of our volunteer coordinators, and they'll do kind of a quick onboarding and try to learn a little bit about you and what you want to do and how you might fit in. And then as of right now, we have a variety of different volunteer committees. We have the medical advisory committee. So if you're a nurse, a therapist, anyone with a medical background, we're looking for people with that expertise. We have a women's committee, a family committee, a research committee. So if you are interested in research, this is a really big area that we could use help with. I head up the government relations committee for now. And so if you're interested in policy research, that would be a good one. The volunteer committee, the events committee, who's led by Emmy, who's just fantastic, super volunteer.
As I was actually going to say is research is probably one of the biggest areas that I think we need, because like we were saying, we want to become subject matter experts in this field. And part of that is putting out research and position papers and having the data to support what we're saying. And part of the challenge is that data may not exist. We may have to go and gather it ourselves. Actually, while I was in DC, I ended up spending probably 6 hours in the Library of Congress just diving through old regulatory history, trying to find anything related to the aeromedical process and the legislative intent or regulatory history of how did we get these regulations. And I'm certainly not an expert in it. I'm just a little dorky kid that got his Library of Congress card and wanted to go to the main reading room and do something useful with it.
Well, do we want to get to our final question here, Maddie?
Oh, I think we should.
It's Maddie's favorite
that time.
question, so we're going to let her ask you.
I like how it's just become my question.
100 horse-sized ducks.
What?
100 horse-sized ducks.
Oh, it's
one duck-sized
It's a
horse.
question from Reddit. It's like 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck.
100 duck-sized horses would be hysterical, but also terrifying. Okay, anyway.
That wasn't the question.
I wish that was the question. That would have been so funny.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be. That's so funny.
Just change our whole format of our podcast.
Honestly, can we just change our question? Honestly, for real. I know, because you are people with opinions, that you guys both have unpopular opinions. I would like to hear your most controversial, unpopular opinion, hot take, whatever it may be. What is your aviation unpopular opinion?
First of all, just a note on unpopular opinions. We love unpopular opinions. We love negative feedback. So if there's anything we said that you thought was totally wrong, by all means, also info at PMHC. But I think an unpopular opinion that I have, and I wish I didn't have it, I'm becoming increasingly worried that the United States is losing its edge in aviation. And I know it's hard to see on the surface right now because we're so dominant, especially in general aviation. I am worried that technologically some other countries have the ability, they just have never really, I'm kind of thinking of the EU, they've never really gotten together and tried as one block. I am worried a little bit about that. I could be wrong about that, but it's just, I think a lot of people in our industry have become comfortable and used to the fact that we've been on top for a while, and there's a whole lot of really good talent out there in the world. So become an aerospace engineer and start a company.
That is a really good take.
It is a really good take. Wasn't expecting. Chris, what do you have for us?
I'm kind of going back to what I said a little bit earlier because it's unpopular even with myself. The solution, I think the fastest solution is everyone report everything. It's unpopular with me. I don't think I could bring myself to actually be okay with that personally. And I know how big of an ask or a say that is, but I think that would be the fastest way to get the system changed. I think that it would highlight how archaic the process is.
Huge risk, like you said, but yeah, it would certainly cause some ruffles in the system if everyone just reported everything. Very good opinions. Thank you, gentlemen. Hey, guys, when can we see you again?
Yeah, come visit us at AirVenture.
Yes.
And I think we have the same booth we did last year, which would be, it's in one of the corners in B Hangar.
So you guys will be at Oshkosh again this year, and people can reach out to you there as well?
Yep. If you are struggling in any way, very common. Mental health symptoms of all varieties, suicidal ideation, very common across the population. You're not that much of an outlier. You're not alone. Don't ever think that you're alone. Don't hesitate to reach out. Take a deep breath. You will get through it because things are improving, even though when you're in that dark place, I think it can be hard to recognize it, but things are improving 100%. And you matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really great one to bring up. And there have been people that have been through the process before. There will be people that go through the process after. Get the help that you need, or you think you need, or you want. Don't try and hold it in. And I'm always gonna throw out the suicide prevention hotline 988. If you are ever in that place, please call and talk to someone and get help. The world is better off having you in it, and there is a way to get through this.
100%.
Absolutely.
Some great final words, gentlemen. Appreciate that. I just want to thank both of you for taking the time out of your evenings to sit down and chat with us and tell us about your organization, some things that are going on in this space. It's been really, I think, enlightening, and I think it's an important topic to cover. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for letting us be a part of it. We really appreciate it. And I hope this is the beginning of more conversations.
And thank you for the invitation. And sorry scheduling was so challenging with all our back and forth.
It worked out. Here we are. Well, thanks to the guys for joining us on this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. Again, I think it's a really important topic. I think we're fortunate that they were able to come on, chat with us a bit about what their organization is doing. And hopefully there can be some success with some of these legislative movements that are happening right now with these bills being introduced.
The amount of progress they've made being such a new organization is incredible. It's clear from the response, and there's no surprise there that they have something that people are interested in and concerned about. It is not a far stretch to say that, most of the country probably is interested about this, especially given past events. So I think it's really incredible that there is actionable change occurring because, like they said, it's one thing to want it. It's another thing to actually do it. Yeah. So it's awesome that they're actually doing it.
For sure. And I'll point out one more time that if you're interested in more information with volunteering or what have you, website's pmhc.org, or you can email them at info@pmhc.org as well. We'll put that down on the show notes in case I had dyslexia and I mixed up the letters. Please don't tell the FAA.
Yeah, right. Right. How dare you put that on your medical? No, they're really doing a good thing. So yeah, please support them if you can financially, if you absolutely can. I know times are tough. No, they're doing a great work. We're really excited to have them on. So
I think that within our Discord, we'll have some more conversation on this. I'm curious what other people's thoughts are. So whether you want to join our Discord and have the conversation with us there, join in that discussion, or just send us a comment or email, you can reach us on any of our social media or at the old email address, flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com. If you're not on the Discord or you're interested, we have that and Patreon community. Both of those get exclusive content from the podcast. Information on how to join both of those will be down on the show notes. Or just contact us by email and we will be happy to send you more information. One of the other big things we do on there is we do get feedback on solo show topics. So we will likely have a solo show coming up in the near future again. Those will be exclusively available that we would live stream on those platforms. But if you've got topic ideas, you can let us know that too.
Speaking of solo shows, if you have an idea for a future episode topic, you want to be on the show, you want to nominate somebody else to be on the show, you want to volunteer them to be on the show.
Oh, I love that option.
I know, right? So exciting. Please let us know. We would love to hear about it. We are always looking for new ideas, new people to talk to. There's a lot out there. So if you have something unique that you do or somebody else does and you want to hear about it on the podcast, please let us know.
Absolutely. And finally, this is the part where I beg and plead for you to go onto whatever platform you're listening to this on now, hit a 5-star rating, leave a review. We'd be happy to read that in a future episode.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode. We were so happy to have you here. And until next time.
See ya.
See ya. See ya.
That was her badger.
Lightspeed 536, contact Minneapolis Center 132.35 today.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.